they wanted.
Yeah.
Yes.
So sex in marriage, the best sex that you were designed to have. So maybe you can explain that subtitle.
So we want to already just set the stage for all those who are watching this. We are not gurus, we're not experts, but we love God, and we've learned a number of biblical principles about sex and how it's actually a beautiful thing in the right context. We even asked our kids, we talk about this with our kids when we introduce sex. Sex is not a bad word. Sex is a great word in the right context. And so the subtitle, say the subtitle again.
Yeah, the best sex you were designed to have. Right?
So there's only really one design for sex, and it's in the context of marriage. Yeah. And when it is in that context, there are maybe a couple things we'll unpack that'll help make sure that it is something that is beautiful, something that is enjoyed in the right design. We're talking about maybe making this 2 parts. Many of the topics that we've unpacked with you that are loaded and juicy, we've done into 2 parts. So the next part, we will have a special guest, and let's pray that we get that special guest for today. It's our banter. So I'm going to ask Joy questions about this. So babe, what is that design? Let's talk about the design first.
Yeah, so as I was praying about it and I was studying the word, because I want it to be based on that, right? Because if it's just our idea, it's meaningless. But
you're not going to give tips like for you and what works for you.
We will give tips after we share the word, okay?
Because it's something obviously.
Please don't make it awkward, okay? Just don't make it awkward.
It's something we practice. It's not just you're not going to say here's the word and just say there it is. Do that.
But I just
yes or no?
Yes, but I want to show the beauty of God's word.
Sure.
It's related to that. So Proverbs 5 verse 15 to 23, and the first part says, what does it say, babe?
So we have to have another disclaimer here. If there are children watching, please don't have them watch. Just because there are some details in this verse that one of our sons, Elijah, the eldest, when he was reading, he's like, there's some things in the Bible that are, I'm setting up the stage here. So there might be some things that'll be very exciting. Drink water from your own cistern, flowing water from your own well. Should your springs be scattered abroad, streams of water in the streets, let them be for yourself alone and not for strangers with you. Let your fountain be blessed and rejoice in the wife of your youth. A lovely deer, a graceful doe. Pause muna. Okay. Pause. Okay. Talk that. Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that. So I think it's very interesting that the whole context is about.
Yeah. So our team
water.
Here, Lorraine and Alessa, you guys are doing amazing. You can show that verse. Proverbs 5, verse 18 is good. 18. Let your fountain be blessed. Rejoice the wife of your youth, a lovely deer, graceful doe. Yeah.
But the context I think is also important because you and I have been to the Middle East, and it can get ridiculously hot. Right?
Yeah, we think it's hot right now.
And do you remember how when we traveled there, we were so upset that water was so expensive, right? Because I think when it uses this illustration of water, it's just showing how important, it's giving importance to water as symbolism of sex, of your relationship with your spouse. And I like how it says when you put effort and focus on your own relationship, it becomes something that satisfies, because you said it here. Can you read this favorite verse of yours?
Oh, you want me to read that already? The juicy one. Okay,
yeah.
So they're showing verse 18 right now. So you want them to show the first part, drink water?
Yes, and it says your own.
So guys, can you show 5 verse 15? So everybody sees 15. We'll focus on that. So that's the cistern. That's the water that Joy's talking about right now. Then I'm going to go to the juicy part that might actually be.
But what does it speak to you as a man, right?
Yes.
Because actually it's speaking to men.
Okay.
But it says drink water from your own cistern, flowing water from your own well. Why should your springs be scattered abroad? Why should you waste it, in other words, right?
So basically have sex with your wife.
Yeah, and you focus on your own relationship.
That's right. You focus on that.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And when it says to rejoice in the wife that you married, how hard is that today? I mean, speaking as a man.
Let me just add something about that. So this is the verse. Let's go to this one. Drinking from your own cistern, flowing from. So the whole idea is, if you want to enjoy sex, as we will see here, the Bible prescription is obviously do it with your spouse in your own well, your own cistern. And that's what you're unpacking,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And you're not supposed to share it with strangers.
Yeah, so this seems pretty obvious, like obviously, right, should be with your wife, all that. But what we want to show is the beautiful dimensions surrounding this. So let's now go to, now you can show which one did you want to show? Verse 18. Let your fountain be blessed. There you go. Thank you, guys. So let your fountain be blessed. Thanks for being very flexible. It's amazing, Alyssa and Lorraine. Let your fountain be blessed and rejoice in the wife of your youth. I love the aspect of this that reminds us that it doesn't say rejoice in your young wife. I just have to call that out. Every time I see this verse, I remember that insight. The Bible doesn't say, rejoice in your young wife, because the reality is we will all grow old. Me as a husband, my wife will grow old as a wife. And as we both grow old, I think there's a tendency to feel like, you know what, I'm not as beautiful anymore, right? I'm not as attractive anymore. And maybe that might affect the sex and the intimacy. So when the verse says rejoice in the wife of your youth, not rejoice in your young wife, there's something about, if you're able to preserve the purity and the intimacy within the marriage, then that same woman you fell in love with when you were younger, and the same one you chose to marry, you were attracted to, then all of the intimacy as God has designed in sex will be something you can continue to rejoice in even as you grow older. So that's why I like those verses. And then it reinforces it with this. Are you ready for this? Okay, I said, if there are any kids here,
I think it's Edric's favorite passage in the Bible.
let's not overshare. TMI. Let's go to verse 19. So 18 is let your fountain be blessed, rejoice in the wife of your youth. Then 19, can you put verse 19, ladies? You might be like squeamish as you type this on the screen, but we want everybody to see it. So verse 19 says, a lovely doe, it's going to come out soon, a lovely deer, a graceful doe. Are you ready? I'm not going to say it until it's on the screen. Okay, so let your fountain be blessed, the Bible said in verse 18. Rejoice in the wife of your youth. So I have unpacked that, and I love the beauty of that. And if you're able to appreciate that and preserve it, on a side note, let's be realistic, right? The struggle for us guys, the struggle for us men is this. When we carry on through the marriage, and maybe even for women, right? We can get distracted. We can see other things.
How do you like
things meaning like other girls for me or other guys for you, right? And the reality is, when those things happen, it naturally affects the way you view your spouse. And even in the context of sex, if you are struggling with pornography or if you struggle with that, then it distorts the way you view your spouse. And I say this because, my struggle was pornography, but this was done back when I was in my single stage. When I got married, God is good. He's been able to free me from that. But I've looked, I've seen girls, and I've noticed, and there'd be times when Joy would call me out, and I think we've shared this on other occasions. But as we've done that, I failed to realize how hurtful it is to my wife. And the only reason I'm sharing all of this, and maybe this is TMI, is because there came a point where I prayed. I said, God, would you give me eyes only for my wife? Please help me. Because of that same verse, rejoice in the wife of your youth. It doesn't become a comparison. She doesn't have to feel like she's competing with a younger woman or another woman because I'm looking or I'm tempted. Those are the things that we need to be able to deal with. So let's show the verse now, ladies. Are you ready? Let's show it. Verse 19. Like a loving doe and a graceful mountain goat is the verse here. It's deer in our version here. Let her breast satisfy you at all times. Be exhilarated always with her love. All right, honey. Before I get flustered here, why don't you unpack?
Well, I like other translations where it actually says, "Be intoxicated always in her love." And I like intoxicated because it's like when a person gets drunk.
I don't know what that's like.
Yeah. So you get more and more into a state of intoxication, right?
Okay.
Right?
I'm going with you here. Okay,
yeah.
And then.
So it's supposed to be a good thing in the context of marriage. And another word for it is actually captivated.
There you go. That's a nice word.
Yeah.
That I can relate to.
Yeah, but
I'm like this. This is captivated because intoxicated. I'm trying to apply that.
Because I'm not done with that part. I just
Okay,
want to say something really quick about the intoxicated part. What I find amazing is how the passage in verse 15 first started off with water, but then it says something like being intoxicated, which is like turning water into wine. And it's like God does a miracle in your marriage, even in your sexual relationship, when you really focus on your spouse. Because, come on, in what society does it seem realistic that a husband will always be captivated by their wife sexually as she ages? It just doesn't seem
And as
realistic.
she ages, I mean, just
Yeah, it doesn't seem realistic, right? And
because
some
guys
guys
are
can have
some guys don't have
performance issues
any
also,
desire, yeah.
right? And so the fact that it all of a sudden switches to a word like intoxicated, I think this is the NASB. I find that so interesting because I feel like it's God saying to us, I can make this happen.
Mhm.
Only if you follow
Mhm.
my design, right? So
So I was so captivated. It's like
Yeah.
this. So I was trying to imagine what does intoxicated look like visually, but captivated would be like this. Wow.
you know,
Lovely dear.
no, that sounds a little bit scary. I think it's more like like the
So-
tenderness that when you
No, but
say
it is
captivated-
it is like that. Like I'm
Okay.
enthralled, right? I'm using
Oh,
other
okay.
vocabulary words. Like I
Okay.
can't stop thinking about her.
So-
Like wow, that's captivated. Like whoa.
Okay, so I was thinking that first we need to start off by saying that God's design is really good, right? And it's really meant to be for our blessing.
Mhm.
And it's meant to be forever.
Mhm.
I mean, this is the verse that makes me cry here because it says that you would always be intoxicated by her love. And God wants it to be something that lasts a lifetime, right? It's not supposed to be something that wanes or disappears. So I think if there's something wrong in the marriage relationship where there's not that sexual intimacy, I think we need to think through what could be the cause of that. And so
And before we sound like we're theorists here, the people that mentor us that we look up to, even in their 70s, are still enjoying good sex.
I think
Just
better
to be able
than-
to just to qualify it,
better than
because it's
young
like,
people,
well,
yeah.
when you get older, the reality is,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
and we're not talking, without going to details. Obviously, good sex isn't about necessarily. Even put this into
I'm very
words.
interested to hear
Yeah,
what you're about to say.
Let's save that for part 2. Let's just save that, but just trust us when we say that
Okay.
good sex, even at 70s,
Okay.
is possible for married couples.
So that's
Good.
okay. So
No.
that's the design, right? That even into your older age, that it would be something
Can be
amazing,
enjoyed, yes.
right? But let's be practical now,
Mhm.
okay? Because we showed the text,
Mm.
but let's be practical. So, number one, what do you think is important for a husband and wife to do in order to make sure that they really focus on their spouse?
Oh, so many things.
Yeah, okay, but what about this one right here?
Well, how about you? Try as a tip, right? You
Well, I think first is we have to keep our minds clean.
clean and clear.
Clean
right?
and
Both.
pure. Beautiful. You know how the Bible says, Philippians 4 verse 8, whatever is pure, whatever
There's
is
noble.
good, whatever is noble.
There's
We
noteworthy.
think on these
Dwell
things.
on these things.
We
Dwell.
on these things. And how it also says in Romans 12 verse 2 that we have to renew our mind. Because
Yeah.
if we think in worldly terms,
So you can put down there you go. You can put the verse also.
if
Philippians
we
4:18.
develop,
Nice one.
right, if
Good
we
job.
develop
Keep our minds clean.
an appetite, habits that make us, let's say, if we entertain ourselves with content that is sexual in nature, shows sex the way that the world portrays it, then naturally that becomes our expectation, and it also programs our desires.
So practical.
So practical would be,
Yeah.
well, as a man, what does that mean?
That's you first.
Well, for me, well, I try. Of course, I don't look at pornography by God's grace. I know women who do struggle with it.
And you've
and-
never, right? You've never. Yeah.
Because I don't want to. I mean, I don't.
That's a good thing. So I'm just saying, call it out. So you've never been able to see that.
I don't want to because I don't want to see another guy naked. Honestly, I don't want to have something to compare you to, right?
That's an interesting statement. Which it's reality, right? That's the reality.
I don't want
For
to have like
both ways.
an
Just
image in my
image,
mind
yeah.
when sex is supposed to be something just between you and I and something really intimate
Mhm.
and something that we don't need to be conscious about in the
Mhm.
sense of like performance or the way we look. So I don't want to put certain expectations in my mind, and I don't want to.
Right. So you're
to-
saying for you, practically speaking, you stayed away from porn, which is great. What other things do you do that help make sure that you keep your mind clean? that doesn't create comparisons or pollutes the whole intimacy. Why don't you talk about how, I think you alluded to this last time, you try to make sure that you always try to stay attractive.
Oh, yeah,
mystery.
down.
Down.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
other
okay.
tip. Okay.
So number 2.
Oh wait, that's it for clean?
Yeah.
Me. So I'll give tips,
Oh my
right?
goodness. For
So
men.
for clearly, and this is the challenge. I'm mentoring even single guys, and they were talking about how even Lazada, things will pop up, and there's all sorts of stuff, even just innocently looking around. So the challenge, let's be very realistic for guys. The challenge is to keep our guards up.
Eyes, I think, right?
Our eyes, there's so much stuff out there. Even just driving down the highways, there's stuff that we will see. So it's I would say it's a habit we need to be able to form, right? And I say we because it's us. It's not like I'm Mr. Perfect and you guys are proud. It's us. We need to continue to guard our eyes. I think.
Didn't you just say that something popped up on your Instagram or something? You told me about it today.
That's a secret. That's TMI.
No, that's not TMI because this whole topic is TMI.
So,
right?
so you will see image or something that pops up, even a friend request. All this, so there's so many permutations. The general guide is if you want to keep your mind clean, then that same prayer I had earlier, right? My honest sharing to you guys of saying, Lord, give me eyes only for my wife. That extends to all other media. That God would give me tunnel vision. That I will not, even if I do get tempted, I will flee. I will stay away and not indulge myself.
And when
in those
do you
things.
get more tempted? I think that's the question.
So,
right?
aside from that, it's not just the private life, but together. What kind of movies do you watch? What kind of shows do you watch? I mean, there's times when we would watch movies and we would see, that it's really getting really sexual and just
so let's talk
crazy.
About Bid Angel.
So then we stop and we're like, we're not going to go there because that's what we mean by clean. What kind of music do we listen to?
Oh.
Right? What kind of articles in news? I mean, and what kind of these are very practical and very honest questions and hard ones we need to ask ourselves. What stuff do we see in our Viber groups and the WhatsApp groups? And as you're getting these things, are you able to do it in a very honest and real way and saying, hey guys, maybe we shouldn't be sending this, or your thought to yourself is maybe I shouldn't even be in this group because
did
it's
you
just
have a thought like that recently?
So so anyway, Joy wanted to talk about Bid Angel as a very practical thing you can do.
Yeah.
We've discovered this online service for those who like watching streaming videos, whether it's Netflix or Disney Plus or whichever of the platforms, Amazon Prime, Amazon
Prime
movies or shows. You can use Vid Angel. Look it up, Vid Angel. We're not endorsing this for the record.
You mean we're not paid to talk about it?
We're not paid to talk about it.
But we are endorsing it as something good.
But I'm curious about maybe working with them. But so Vid Angel, it's a subscription. I want to say it already there. It's a subscription, but if you subscribe to it, it filters the streaming content that you like, and you can even suggest to them shows that you would want them to be able to filter also. Amazingly, what they do is as they filter that, you can choose. For example, you don't want the bad words. You don't want sexual words. You don't want sex scenes. You don't want naked scenes, whether it's guy or girl. Because, even sometimes it's... So you can choose all that. And after you choose it, it will show you how much of the movie is left in a bar, honestly. And then you can decide, you know what? Yes, I think I'm going to remove all that and see what it looks like. Or I might add something. It's really up to you. But the point is that, again, these are very real and honest ways where we can ask ourselves, what are we filling our minds with so that we might keep it clean?
And can I just say
and I think this is a very big battle and one of the most insidious, which is why we unpacked a little bit more. So
can I insert something?
Yeah,
here?
and one last thing. I just want to say this. For the Vid Angel also has its own stuff like comedy that's clean and its own set of shows. So you might want to look into that.
Can I just say that, as we're sharing this, we don't want people to ever think like, well, that's our standard and we're expecting you to be like us, because it's not like that at all.
We're sharing.
No, and I think because what we're trying to share with you guys is God has that standard. And that's what we're aspiring to. It's not about the Mendozas or what they do. And it's you have to have the conviction. No, I think because all of us have to have the conviction that God's standard of holiness is not about horizontal comparing with others and what other people do, but it's like, Lord, how can I be more like
Exactly. So what we're doing, just to be able to frame it, I like framing things, right? Because I do these talks. Principle and practice. What we're showing you is the principle. This is God's word. And then the practice is just some tips we give. Now, the practice is secondary. So like Joy said, this is our thing. It might not work for you. So these are the practices, and some get a little bit uncomfortable for maybe some of you to hear, but we're okay with that. Practice, but the principle is what we're sharing. Okay, so we've given some of the principles and the practice. We're going through some other practices now. Go.
So number 2. So there's a wonderful passage in Genesis, right, that says, "For this reason a man shall leave his father and his mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh."
It's the principle. So you guys can show that. Genesis
So,
2:24.
Oneness of flesh. And the man and his wife were both naked, but they were not ashamed.
Yep.
And I think today, if we were to think about it, when you come into marriage and you've had a lot of sexual experiences before, you've been exposed to pornography, and you both know that about each other, there's a bit of that shame coming into doing sex together, because you're wondering, how do I compare to my spouse's previous partners, or what is he thinking when he sees my body? Is it good enough for his standards? And so that's why it's so important, right, that first we keep our minds clean, and we talked about that. But we also have to do things that cultivate that oneness, the leaving and cleaving part. And this isn't just about avoiding things and sex, sex outside of marriage or seeing it, but it's about
many other things you're doing together.
Doing things together,
so
having fun together.
Yeah, so that's like intimacy is not just sex. Intimacy is the closeness of your relationship. And to do that, what you're trying to say is there's many other things you can do together.
There's many other layers that make sex good.
Yeah.
And so if you're not doing fun things together, if you're not enjoying each other's company, you're not able to talk about things, go deep in your relationship, the sex is not going to be good.
Yeah, I think we talked about this before. We love Craig Rochelle's model when we talk about this idea of face to face, side to side, and then belly to belly. I don't think he said it in this sequence, but what Joy is trying to share, which I totally agree with, when you talk about the practice, is you need to have face to face, you need to have side to side in order to have belly to belly. So belly to belly, you can imagine that's the sex, right? But face to face is all about you. Are you able to have good, honest, open communications about dreams, struggles, problems, even the way you handle the stresses or the stresses towards each other? That's the face to face. The side to side is just enjoying. Are the things you actually enjoy together, right? This is a practical way to be able to build on what you were talking about in that verse, right? So the third would be the belly to belly. So go ahead.
So that was number 1, was to keep our minds clean, right? And to aspire for God's holiness, not man-centered, man-centered morals.
Number 2.
And then number 2 is to do things that encourage oneness, leading and cleaving. And then number 3 is adjust to the seasons you're in and don't compare with others or to what it used to be.
Yeah.
Like let's be very practical.
So 2 is do things that encourage oneness. You guys can put that on the screen so our viewers can see that. And then number 3 is now what Joy's unpacking. I think we'll stick to maybe how many? There's a lot of points. Joy has like 100 points.
No, adjusting. No, babe, that's my secret. Okay.
So we're gonna keep it tight. So
Yeah.
number 3 is adjust to the seasons you are in.
Yeah. So for example,
Thanks,
Edric and I, although we'd like to think that we're still youngish,
Yes, bro.
I've gone through major surgery, which means that I was forced into menopause prematurely. And this has been a difficult season for us. Well, especially the year right after my operation. And one of my fears was that I would be like a Lola in terms of sex and everything and just all the changes. And Edric would still be like this young buck and, really... really still... How come every time you do it, it sounds just bad?
That does not sound bad.
So,
Young buck, go.
Okay, it sounds naughty is what I'm saying. Okay, so anyway.
Only you think it's naughty. Believe me.
I
People
know
here
you,
are like,
I know
oh,
you."
he's so funny.
See, I lost my train of thought. So, oh my goodness, hon. Wait.
You're talking adjust to the seasons in. You felt like you were becoming a Lola, and I was this young buck, and then.
Yeah. So what I had to do my part also. I had to start taking hormone therapy, and just because I had zero libido, and it was hard for him.
Zero?
Yeah, I told you that it was even negative. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, man.
And And we had to talk about it, and that would be one of the points later on also. But I think one of the things you said to me the other day, which I really, 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 really appreciate, and have not been able to tell you that yet, is when I asked you, babe, do you feel badly about all the changes that have happened to me? And for example,
What? No. Sorry, she's asking me about a private, intimate question. I just said no.
okay. Okay, so how shall we proceed?
I don't. You pursue.
All right, so
So what did I say?
So you
you're
said-
set everybody up
said-
for this amazing. I want to hear it. This is Monday. So I'm like, oh, this is gonna be good.
you said,
What did I say?
you know, babe, I want you to know that I don't compare you to what you were like before, and even our intimacy. You know, I take things as they are, and I try to appreciate whatever it is now. And that doesn't mean that we don't talk about it and try to improve. But when you said that, even things like I don't compare your body to what it is before, or compare what our sex life was before to what it is now, it just gave me so much peace and reassurance that I'm not, like, I'm still meeting your needs in the way that you want me to, but you've been willing to flex to me. It's like when some wives are pregnant or they're breastfeeding, and there are changes that you have to deal with. So you have to find ways to have fun given those parameters.
This is what you're doing with hands.
I said have
Find
fun.
ways. Yes.
Oh my goodness. All right.
Yes, I understand. Thank you for sharing
Okay.
that.
All right. So number 4. Let's move
I
on.
said that because I knew we were gonna have this Mondays. No, I'm just kidding. I'm
So
totally
it's more
kidding.
than the giving reassurance, right? It's being willing to be flexible.
Yeah, that's why it's adjusting to the seasons. This is the point.
Be
the point.
understanding.
Adjusting to the seasons you're in and not comparing with others, right?
Or what it was before.
Or what it was before.
And number 4.
So it's like, I love you right now, and I'm enjoying sex with you right now, right? It's not, well, it's different, but you talk about details, but the enjoyment, you help focus on right now, so it doesn't become difficult, as you heard Joy
Yeah.
sharing.
And number 4, I think trying
Yeah.
your best to do your part. You know that verse says, you reap what you sow.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to have great sex with your spouse, then I have to do my part, for example, to be sweet, to meet your other emotional needs, and you, what do you do in order to kind of, you say, not prime, but prepare the mood or set the stage. This is what happens because you weren't willing to look at these notes earlier. So now you have to really ad-lib in a very
Oh, I'm not ad-libbing at all. This
good
is
way, okay?
spontaneous.
So
Try your best to do your part. I love what Craig Rochelle says about this, and he's been a peg in talking about this. He's a pastor that I respect. He said that for men and women in the area of sex, this is what it means to try to do your best. For men, please change your approach. Change your approach, right? So when it says try to do your best, it's like, don't always just say, hey, you want to have sex?
So you wanna
As soon as you're doing your work and you're done, hey, you want to have sex? Like your wife is like in the bed doing one thing, and you're like, so it's always just you want to have sex? Diretso. Change your approach. And what Joy was saying is, one of the things we learned from our mentors in this area of intimacy and sex is women are like ovens, men are like lighters. So women, you need to kind of warm them up. So it's not just, hey, want to have sex? It's, hey, so how are you doing?
Mhm.
Yeah, and then
How are you doing?
What's been keeping you busy? Yeah. So obviously work with what is your culture. I'm throwing
First
random.
of all, you don't ever
But
use those on me. That is hilarious.
oh yeah, I do.
Not to
Like, hey, babe, how's your
How are you
day?
doing?
How are you doing? So you're basically kind of develop a closeness first that doesn't just to
If
just
you
have
start
sex.
in the morning, be sweet already in the
So
morning.
so you
Tender, like
you
affection without expectation.
you're thoughtful.
like-
You make touches that aren't necessarily sexual. Hey babe, I love you. Kiss lang, hug, right? So change your approach. That's what I've learned. Remember, they're like ovens, and we're like style game. But girls is like a little bit of warm up.
Okay.
For the women, the advice that I remember him saying is make any approach. Just make an approach.
You mean just
So
initiate?
yeah,
it's
like,
nice.
hey, honey, it's been a while, and you'll be shocked if you're a wife right now. Obviously, I want to be sensitive if there are some issues in the marriage that have to do with infidelity and sex. Then this won't apply to you. because
Not yet,
you
because
need
you have to work through
heal
stuff.
through that. But if that's not the case, if you want to get the shock of your life from your husband, and if you're a mother, then there's a reason you became mothers because of something you did with it. So you might want to do that. Make an approach. You like turn the lights down. Hey, let's do something. They'll be like, what? And you'll get
Or you
get
wear
a shock.
something.
If you want, you can even take a video of their reaction just to have some fun. But I'm telling you, vary your approach. No, make an approach, whatever approach. That's my
Or
practical
you wear
advice
something that they know.
to this. Try your best to do your part. I think that's what you wanted me to be able to help.
Yeah, because remember when you said, Joy, when you wear that outfit to bed, it's really not attractive. Can you please change to something more?
I think we should have mid-angel for our Mondays. There are some things that Joy shares. I feel like we should
Sweetheart,
be
can I just say
filtered.
something? You were the one that said, you were the one that last week that it's going to be raw and honest. And
I know. Keep going. Keep going.
So this
We're
is
gonna have a talk
part
with
of it.
Lorraine and Alyssa. We're gonna put filters, okay?
Otherwise,
If Joy started to share something too much, you should go beep beep like that.
It's not even anything too much, right?
Okay.
We have to be just really honest and vulnerable.
Okay.
Okay. So.
Last. This is last.
No,
Almost. Because there will be next week with a guest.
So this one.
Okay, go. Right. Okay, so on a very practical note, in general, communication is key. We did say earlier about how you do your part, right? And we talked about the third principle is adjusting to the seasons you're in. You also obviously want to be able to talk practically about the intimacy itself.
Mm.
And it might be a little bit awkward at first if you've never done it, but it's very helpful.
Like remember not the other day, that's too recent, but some time ago when I asked you on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you rate our sex life? And you said it was a 5.
So what did you say? You said 5 first.
I
You
said 5?
Yes, you said 5 first.
Oh, I was the one that said
You want to
5?
be raw? She said it first. I'm like, yeah, 5 also. Yeah, so.
Oh, and then from there we said, okay, so what would make it?
Yeah, so that could be a starting point. Ask your rating. What do you think? If not, you can initiate and say, hey, you know what? How do you find our sex life? Is there anything that I can improve? And ask specific things. Are you comfortable with that position, with what we're doing now? Or, if there's singles watching here, this might sound as a shock to you, but this is again.
Singles know so much just from.
You're right.
Being exposed to everything.
But marriage, as we're talking about in the safe space, is a beautiful thing. So you want to be able to talk about those things, and if there's something you're not comfortable with, be willing to.
Your spouse is trouble, don't force them.
Yeah.
Right? Because I actually was talking to a woman recently who felt like her spouse was forcing things, certain positions, certain
things. Yes. So we forget that this is it's gonna be played back for eternity. Right? So we have to.
So she was a little bit resentful because she thought he was maybe projecting things that he had seen pornography, and she didn't feel comfortable about that. So those are the things that you have to discuss, right? Because actually, if you both agree, it's okay to play, right? You can discover things together. So
although there are some things you don't want to discover, I mean, just make sure we have boundaries, and we'll talk about that in the next episode.
We will.
Yes, we will.
Is this one of those promises? Like we're gonna really talk about intimacy, but
we promise we talk about sex. We're here.
Okay.
Oh, see.
And then this one. Can you please be the one to say this because this is so important.
All right, the final thing. So I don't know if you saw this number 6, and if our team is able to show this, guys. Number 6 is communicate about what you're comfortable with, right? Talk about these things.
Or how to have more fun together. When.
But communication is so important, and I think nobody teaches us that. It's like you assume now you know how, and the other person should know how, and just do it and kind of
Or you use your reference, which would be maybe from what your friends
said, or pornography, right? Like for me, I learned it from porn.
You learn a lot of those things also.
Very good. So it's good to have these healthy conversations about, start with the finger rating if you want, but that's important. That's number 6. The final one, as you wrap up our time with you, of like squeamish. Let's see what people are chatting as Joy gets ready with the last one. Ayan. 5. Number 5. Yeah, number 5, just so we can get that. Okay. Number 5 is practice being sweet.
Sorry, because number 6 was actually number 5. I'm sorry.
Ayun, nag-jump kami. So this will be the last one na lang. This is the last
this is
one.
number 6. Yeah.
So since we showed number 6, number 5 is practice being sweet for the sake of being sweet. Yan.
No.
Oh, that's your point. Okay. This whole thing is TMI, that's right.
That was rather try your best to do your part. That was the one.
All right, go.
All right, so last one. Please be the one to say this.
Wait, number 5. That's number 5.
That's
So
number
practice
5.
being sweet for the sake of being
Okay,
sweet.
fine.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
There
all
it
right?
is. They wrote it there. So what does that
Okay.
mean? You expound. Go. What does that mean?
I think this is hard for the guys, right? Because you always have vested interests. That's it.
That's my principle a while ago. Change your approach.
Yeah, usually in
Yes,
marriage,
yes.
right? When you're done with the courtship
Yes.
stage and guys just have sexual needs, so the approach is not so tender anymore. It's more like, so if you're gonna put your arm around your spouse or you're going to touch them or kiss them, it's always with the hopes of it's gonna lead to the actual sexual act. And sometimes women don't like that because we don't feel like we're ready yet. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't respond. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. But since you asked the question,
Yeah.
the being sweet for the sake
Yeah.
of being sweet, we really appreciate that. That you just want to be,
Sure.
just want to hold us, you want to cuddle with us,
Yeah.
you want to be affectionate, you want to be tender, and it's not in a selfish, self-serving way because
Yeah.
you feel like, oh, I hope this ends up in something that's gonna be. I hope I get. What's the term that you sometimes say? I hope I
Are
get
you
lucky.
lucky? So let me, I've been goofing off this whole time, guys. I want to be very honest and serious with you also now in this point, because it is for me very close to my heart. Part of the struggle that I've had, and I shared that I struggled with pornography before our marriage, and it actually created junk into our marriage. It's really only God's grace that allowed me to be free from it. And there were still traces, honestly, even just distracted eyes and temptation and all these things. And
Or a peg of what's attractive.
but I did share about that prayer, right? That God would only give me eyes for my wife. And I share that because when we talk about practice being sweet for the sake of being sweet, it sounds so simple and maybe even pathetic. Na parang that's pretty obvious for us guys. But I think the heart behind it is when I looked at the opening verse we gave about being captivated in her love and rejoicing in the wife of our youth. I'm actually a sentimental guy, and Joy knows this, and maybe some of my good friends who are watching know this. I look back at the memories of Joy and her being that young woman back then. And I ask myself, do I love her more today than I did when I first met her? And the reality is that takes work. I think for us guys, if we're honest, once they become our wife, once they say yes, maybe not right away, but a few months into it, we kind of relax, we drop our guard, and we've talked about this in the past Monday, but the heart behind this is we don't practice sweet for the sake of being sweet. Maybe the bigger thought here is, are we continuing to discover our wife? Are we continuing to adapt the way we love to the circumstances in the season that we're in? And I think that as good husbands, that is our duty. My wife, before we left our house earlier to go somewhere, she just grabbed my hand and she embraced me. She said, I love that you always look after our needs. You always take care of me. And as she hugged me, I hugged her back, and she said, honey, it's my sworn duty to love you and protect you. And I smiled as I said that, but I really mean it. The moment that I looked at you and I said, babe, I choose you, I commit to you, and I gave you my vows, and as you gave your vows, I think the man in me, that sense of duty to make sure that I do love her and cherish her and protect her has been what's guided me through. Now, obviously, this is as unto the Lord, because there are days where I just don't feel it. I tell my wife, I don't like you today, but I will never say I don't love you, because there are days I don't like her, and there's days she doesn't like me either, but I will always love her. So that's kind of that's the heart behind this. And I hope the guys who are hearing this can see the heart behind that we really want to keep raising that standard, if you will, of how much we love our wife. And it's not about the effort, it's not about the intensity of the feeling, but it's about the effort we put into showing that we love our spouse, which includes that. It becomes easy to say, well, we're going to be 20 years married, so why do I have to still do these things? She knows I love her, but I still do these things because I know it's important to her, and even if sometimes it's difficult for me, I will do it because that's what love is. And we've talked about this in so many different episodes. So I hope that resonates with you, because it has been something that has helped me. So you still want to do this last one? We're 40 minutes running.
Yeah,
You sure?
because I think that this is something. I think, okay,
This
I will
is
premise
so
it,
sensitive.
but you will say the word.
Whoa.
I will premise it.
I don't know if I
You
want to
know
say
what?
this.
Just imagine, when we talk to our kids about sex, we tell them all the terms. We are so comfortable, and so we must just think about it as us mentoring other couples right now.
Okay,
and it's
sure. Let's do
there's
it.
no shame in it. So,
Having said that, sworn my duty to love and serve.
so I think
And I'll
it's so.
do
Let
this.
me just premise it that actually, the sexual act is really meant to be a giving act.
Yep.
Right? It's not supposed to be self-centered. When it becomes self-centered, when it becomes about me or becomes about you,
That's
then
good.
it's very hard to have a satisfying sex life in
That's
marriage. And so that's why one of the questions my parents.
So I think before you say this, I think there'll be a lot of questions on what if they don't want to.
Yeah, so we can say that for the next.
Yes,
week,
I
right?
set you up
Something
for
to look
that.
forward to.
Okay.
So
So here's the last thing. Let's go straight to it and wrap up with this, right? So the question you want to have coming into sex is not so much what do I get from this, is what can I give into this? What kind of pleasure can I give my spouse, right? And I said spouse, so all the singles here get it. So what kind of pleasure do I give my spouse? Which is why we said it's important to have that communication, because I'll put a word here, experiencing pleasure in the form of orgasm, for example. I know that's a big word. That's not something said on a Facebook Live, but we premise this with as much holiness as we could, right? This sex is God's design. Enjoying it, and part of that is the orgasm that's experienced, and I think everybody understands that English word here, so I'm not going to say it in a squeamish way, because Joy said, like we would tell our kids, if we say it in the way that it is contextualized, then there's nothing to be ashamed of. So that's this last principle. Number 7 is ask yourself, how can I make my spouse experience pleasure? So that's practical principle number 7. You go into sex and think about undertaking the act, not so much what you will get. Just like marriage, it's not about I'm in it for what I get. It's what I'm in it for what I can give. What God has allowed me to be able to give my spouse, right? There you go.
And I think because a lot of wives have told me, right, that they don't really look forward to sex because it's all about just the husband and when he wants it, how he wants it, but they don't really experience pleasure from the experience. And God designed it to be pleasurable. So it's of course possible, and it should be possible, and it should be something that you both work towards and find ways, right? If you have to
let her breasts fill you at all times with delight. I want to be biblical here, right? So obviously there is that pleasure component.
Okay, so as we close.
Go. Close it.
If you look at Proverbs 5, because it goes from 15 to 23, I think here is also the caution and the warning. When it says in verse 21, when it says right after 20, right after 19, why should you be intoxicated, my son, with a forbidden woman and embrace the bosom of an adulteress? And then it goes on to say, which I think is so beautiful how it contextualizes it, for a man's ways are before the eyes of the Lord, and he ponders all his paths. The iniquities of the wicked ensnare him, and he is held fast in the cords of his sin. You know, when we've talked to people who got into adulterous relationships and they just said, I didn't know how to get out of it. I felt like I was trapped. And that's what happens, right? And it says, and this is the scary part, in verse 23, it says, he dies. For lack of discipline. And because of his great folly, he is led astray.
Wow.
And so I think, God's reminding us, at the end of the day, I don't know if Edric is totally faithful in his heart to me. Only God will know that. I trust God to keep him accountable. And of course, we do hold each other accountable. But I can't guard everything that he does. And I remember telling him before, even when it comes to maybe struggles he may have as a man, I even said to him, hon, I just know that you're not going to willingly jeopardize our family and forfeit the blessings of God in our family's life by, doing something sexually immoral. That's how I premised it. Just reminding him in a loving way that at the end of the day, I know that you know that God is watching you. So I don't have to check your phone, check your Facebook, check your Instagram. I don't even know your Facebook password, I think, or your Instagram password. But I'm just going to trust God that God's going to hold you accountable because he's watching you, right? And you know that if you do something wrong, at the end of the day, you're going to forfeit blessings in your life and also in our family's life. And so I think that unless we internalize that as couples, when we realize the sexual act, actually God designed it and he's involved in making sure that it's going to become excellent and beautiful, but he's also there's going to be consequences if it's not done in the context that he designed it to be.
Yeah, that's a great warning. You know, I mean, we've been dealing with couples for years, and God has blessed us to see many of them healed, but there are some that have really been disastrous. And at the end of the day, you know, people have to make their choice individually. You know, that's why the Bible says, do not just be mere hearers, but doers. That's really the challenge. It's not knowing what we need to do, it's doing it. So, yeah, for the guys out there, if you're watching this and you're that guy, you know, you've got to stop it. And or maybe you're that girl, right?
And I'm just saying, like, let's go back to that whole
Yeah.
thought about how the water turning into wine, how God can even take what brokenness you've been through in your marriage and the distortion that you've experienced, even in the area of sexual intimacy, and He can renew it. Like, even for us, right? Where we came from that sort of brokenness at the beginning when I found out that you were heavily into pornography in your single years.
She had,
and I came from sexual abuse and rape. So there were a lot of things that we had to
mix,
work through. But God it brought healing, and He continues to bring healing, and He continues to allow us to understand each other and work on our sex life. And the great thing is, when you're married, it's in the context of that security that you're not supposed to leave each other. If your performance is not so good one day, hey, you can work on it, and it's not like the guy's going to say, well, I'm going to just go find somebody else, because it's not supposed to be like that. And so I think it's the security that marriage offers that actually makes the sex great, because you have a lifetime to become better at it, to enjoy one another, and figure out ways how it can become better and better.
Right. So sex does not define the marriage, but it is a very powerful component of it, which is why we're unpacking it here. And, you know, we're going to unpack it more in session 2 next week.
I know
in
we're
the
really
meantime,
long.
I want to ask you to close on this note. How would you rate our sex life? Go. 1 to 10. Ready?
Oh my goodness.
Set.
I think now it's
Go.
like a 9.
9? I thought 10. So that's good. Good try. So we're going to end on that note, and we will see you guys next week. We hope this has been helpful. Again, remember our hearts. Principle first. Practice a lot of the stuff we talked about. You know, see what works for you. But the principle, the things we shared from God's word, those are the things that you want to really look